Hi, it's Dwyer. First video of the year, January 1st, 2025. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let's talk NFC. I have an earlier video up on the AFC. Folks, in the NFC, I think it's wider open than most. You have a big game in Detroit, last week of the season, right? Regular season. The Minnesota Vikings are coming to town. Understand, Detroit is 14-2, Minnesota's 14-2. Which one of these two teams do I think is going to represent the NFC? I don't believe either of these teams is going to represent the NFC. Shorthand, just remember the color green. I think the Eagles are the best team in the conference. A wild card is the youngest team in the conference, the Green Bay Packers. Those are the teams that interest me. Let me also point out that only one quarterback, one, in the NFC has won a Super Bowl as a starting quarterback. And that's the Rams' Matthew Stafford. They're the speculation here, right? Let's offer another speculation. These are gambling options, not necessarily the best teams week to week. But these are the teams that, on a given Sunday, have enough volatility where if they're on their A game, they're going to be incredibly hard to beat. The second speculation in the NFC, to me, if you're a gambler looking for futures, looking for that team that you can lock in great odds on, and then if they advance, you can step in later and you can hedge the play with the other side, knowing that you're getting leverage, are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Right? Tampa's offense is no joke. Baker Mayfield, believe it or not, has shown us that he's in the top third of all quarterbacks in this league, especially this year. Let's talk about Detroit. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Folks, week 4, Detroit played the Seattle Seahawks. Now, you might not consider Seattle to be an offensive juggernaut, right? But understand, in that game, and it's disturbing, Detroit gave up 38 first downs. Folks, 20 first downs is a decent number. When the other team's up around 38, you have problems. Well, understand, 2 games ago, now that they've lost Hutchinson, 2 games ago, the Buffalo Bills played them. And the Buffalo Bills got 28 first downs. Again, the 28 is excessive. We understand. Buffalo, high-powered offense led by a major MVP candidate. We get it. But what I need for folks to realize is that in the playoffs, people pour over Phil. If you have a weakness, it's going to be exacerbated, right? Offensive coordinators are going to target your weakness. You figure out the weakness in the worst games that the defensive unit has played. So you have the San Francisco 49ers. As I make this video, and I thought the Niners had one of those odd years. I think the Niners are better than advertised. But understand, as I make this video, the Niners have 6 wins on the season. Right? They're 6-10. Understand, too, the Niners have had a host of injuries. You see guys out there like Nick Bosa. Understand, Nick Bosa isn't close to 100%. He's out there because the guy's a warrior. You know the kind of guy. He has shoulder problems. He has knee problems. What's he doing out there? He's trying to make tackles. Right? But just to understand, the Niners aren't close to healthy. Brandon Ayuk has been out all year, apart from some early games when he ended his holdout. Right? He really is their deep threat. Brock Purdy is going to miss the last game of the season because his shoulder and his elbow is that iffy. So what did this beaten up Niner team do against this Detroit defense that has aspirations of winning a Super Bowl? Believe it or not, the Niners got 29 first downs. 29. There are times in this game where it felt like Detroit had no answers, and I mean no answers, for George Kittle. Now, we know Kittle has been a Pro Bowler. Kittle's an elite tight end, right? But at the same time, folks, you have to look at that, and you have to ask the question, wow, it's week 17. What time do they have, especially with Minnesota coming to town? What time do they have to right the ship? Understand, if they lose the Minnesota game, they're not the 1 seed. They're on the road. So look, I understand. Jared Goff and that offense are special. No question about it. For the record, the Niners, even against this special offensive unit, had 6 more first downs than Detroit, right? Let's just say if Detroit loses the Minnesota game, I think they're in trouble. I'm not sure how well this defensive unit is going to hold up on the road. Right? Let me say, too, one of the things I like with Philly is the fact that fans know, the team knows, that the weather's going to turn south in November. So that defense is not fazed by playing in windy, cold, rainy, freezing conditions, because that's part of the Philadelphia Eagle experience. Now, dare I say, if they, by the way, KC has that advantage too, right? KC can get cold in November and December, right? These indoor defenses, though, I wonder, right? Let's just say they were outdoors against the Niners. Wow, that defense didn't look Super Bowl worthy. Let me just say this about Minnesota, and I know this is going to be unconventional. Let the chips fall where they may. Just follow the film. Right? I understand Green Bay is younger. I understand Green Bay won 3 less games, at least going into the last week of the season. Right? We get all that. I would say that Love has a higher ceiling than Darnold. I would argue that Josh Jacobs, between the two teams, is the best running back on either roster. As good as Minnesota's defense has been, right? And they have Brian Flores, and he is a magician, the defensive coordinator, right? You can tell that he's special by the fact that he throws blitzes where some guys go unblocked, right? But let me just say, Green Bay has a great coach. Green Bay defensively, in my opinion, is competitive with Minnesota and is much better than Detroit's defense. Also, Green Bay showed us last year in the playoffs that they were for real. Well, understand, this is the youngest team in the league. These are young guys who don't know better. They're in the playoffs, they're competing, they think this is going to happen every year of their career. Right? I think Green Bay, because of age, because of talent, because of a running game you can lean on. Jacobs 1 year led the entire league in rushing. I think Green Bay is dangerous. I think Green Bay has more legs than Detroit or Minnesota. Let me say, too, Philadelphia. Who's more mobile? Love, Darnold, or Jalen? Right? I would say it's Mr. Hurts. Understand, too, this Philly team was recently in a Super Bowl. They had a double-digit lead on who else? Pat Mahomes, right? Mr. Comeback. In the second half of that game. So this is the hardened team that actually has Super Bowl experience that this Lion team, this Viking team, this Packer team does not have. Right? Let me also make a statement that's going to get comments. I believe the best wide receiver tandem in the NFC is Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Right? I've watched receivers a long time. There are very few who are big moment wide receivers. Right? Where you're watching the game, it's all on the line. You need that first down. And suddenly, whatever he's been doing the rest of the game, suddenly here's Michael Irvin. Suddenly here's Jerry Rice. Right? You know the guy, he shows up in the biggest moments. That's A.J. Brown. As I see it, and I know Justin Jefferson, big-time player. But A.J. Brown in big moments, in my opinion, is as good as any wide receiver in the NFC. Right now, let's talk about a recent game. They lost to Daniels and the Washington Commanders. Let me point out, I'm serious when I say I don't believe in rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs. I don't care what the Commanders are doing. I'm going to save my time. I don't think it's Washington's year. Washington has some big wins, including that last game against Philly. I need for folks to understand. First, Jalen Hurts doesn't play most of the game. Right? You have Kenny Pickett in there. Second, even with Kenny Pickett, you should have won that game. There is a play, if it's caught by Devontae Smith, the game's over. Right? The ball hits Smith, who has some of the best hands in the league. He's a great wide receiver in terms of, catching the football. He doesn't bobble the football and stuff like that. He has great hands. But on this play, we all have bad days. We all have fluke plays. On this play with the game on the line, Smith had the ball hit him in the hands and he dropped it. So I'll give Washington credit. I'll give Daniels credit. Washington then was able to get the touchdown, the go-ahead touchdown, and was able to beat Philly. Folks, that game's going to help Philly. Right? Because they lost to a divisional opponent. If the team was full of itself, that mindset left the room after they lost to the Commanders. Right? So let me just say, they're going to get Jalen back. I haven't even mentioned the 2,000-yard rusher, Saquon Barkley. Right? I think Philly is just too loaded for these other teams. Right? I think Philly has a much better defense then Detroit and Minnesota. I think Philly has the more mobile quarterback. I think Philly has the best group of wide receivers. I think Philly has the running back. Understand, for everything Detroit has done this year, they only have one more win. Granted, it's in a much tougher division, but they only have one more win than the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are the 2 seed. Right, folks? I think that the team that was recently in the Super Bowl, right, the team that, is at home the first game of the playoffs. We don't know that with certainty here about either Detroit or Minnesota. We just don't. We know that with certainty about the Eagles. Right? Defense wins championships. You understand, Philly, better defense. Right? The Niners, let's just say I can't envision them getting 29 first downs this time of the year against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, let me just say this, and I don't say it lightly. Saquon Barkley needs to give up his hope of catching Eric Dickerson for all of this to work. Right? Understand, it's a whole offensive unit that would have to go out there week 18 and try to get Saquon this rushing record. I'm a Giants fan. Lord knows I don't think we have a great defense. Right? If this were the middle of the season, I would predict Saquon would get well north of 100 rushing yards. Right? Even against a divisional opponent. But what I don't like is the idea of offensive linemen wasting their health capital trying to get Saquon Barkley the record, right? Barkley's not running by himself. It's not like I can rest all the vets and then just have Saquon out there trying to get the record. Right? No, I need a game plan. I need my offensive line there committed to getting this guy the record. I need to play smash mouth. If the Giants show up and they say, man, we're not going to let our former running back get the record against us, right? And the Giants have looked inspired of late, believe it or not. Right? If the Giants show up and they say, look, no layups. If you're going to beat us through the air. We'll have our DBs back there in single coverage on your wide receivers. Right? But we're not going to let this guy beat us in this last game. Right? If the Giants come up to the line, folks, that's a bloodbath. That's a stressful game. Not only that, I don't like the risk involved. Right? Understand. Saquon gets hurt, wow, Philly's chances of getting to the Super Bowl drop precipitously. If one of these linemen get hurt, your left tackle gets hurt, oh my goodness, your odds drop precipitously. Let's say the Giants play inspired football. Right? Didn't they just beat a team in playoff contention? Let's say the Giants play inspired football and actually stop Saquon Barkley. Is that the mood you want in the locker room? Guys feeling down, thinking to themselves, man, we couldn't get Saquon the record. Right? Moping around. Oh, by the way, next week's a playoff game. That's not the mood you want in the room. You want the team rested. You want them thinking, yeah, that's right, the NFC East, we won that. Yeah, that's right. There's more on the table here. You want the offensive line fully rested. You want Saquon Barkley fully rested. Right? Let me also make another point here, and I know I'm going to sound like an old-timer saying, get off my lawn. Right? I understand in 1960, there was a group out there who said, look, Maris did not beat Ruth in 154 games. Well, let me make that argument here. Right? OJ, 2,000 yards in 14 games. Right? Dickerson, 2,105 yards in 16 games. Right, folks? Saquon did not have 2,000 yards in 14 games. Saquon did not have 2,105 yards in 16 games. This 17-game schedule is a little bit new, isn't it? Right, I'm not sure if beating Dickerson in 17 games really means that you've beaten Dickerson. Right, there's a group out there that believes that OJ is still the man. Right, there's a group out there that believes Jim Brown is still the man. So if I'm Saquon Barkley and if I'm Philly, I ask myself, what's more important? Right? Is it showing up at the arena and having a banner 5 years from now, having a banner that shows that you won a Super Bowl? Right? Understand, the last time Philly won a Super Bowl, Nick Foles was the quarterback, not Jalen Hurts. Got a lot of guys on this Philly team who have no rings. Right? Is that more important? Or is it a banner that says Saquon Barkley set Eric Dickerson's record? I think it's the former, not the latter. I don't think the 17th game of the season has the same gravitas that a quest by Saquon to erase Eric Dickerson from the record books in the 16th game of the season would have. Right? So let's just say, if I hear that Philly has decided to sit Saquon for week 18, that's just going to make the Philly pick that much stronger. Right now, there's a chance, based on seeding, that Philly plays Green Bay in the playoffs. If that happens, I'll be rolling with the winner of that game. Right? I think both of these teams are incredibly dangerous. As for Matthew Stafford, understand, his head coach, Sean McVay, won a Super Bowl. His head coach, Sean McVay, has been to multiple Super Bowls, including one with Jared Goff, right, where they got manhandled by the Patriots. Let's be clear on that. But just understand, the guys who have done it have a distinct advantage over the guys who haven't. Right? The Rams, they have problems. But my goodness, there are weeks where the Rams look inspired, aren't there? Right? Puka Nacua, my goodness. Right? The Rams have certain guys who might not make the Pro Bowl because they missed time due to injury. But the bottom line is, you don't want to be going up against Puka Nacua. Right? That's the bottom line. They're missing Aaron Donald. They don't have the same defensive force. I don't think they have the talent. But let's just say, given the defensive holes that teams like the Detroit Lions have, a quarterback like Matthew Stafford, who was the first pick in the draft the year he came out, right? A quarterback like Matthew Stafford with an offensive head coach. That's who McVay is. Right? Might be able to do some things. Right? Finally, let me just say, Tampa, every time I see that offense, I'm more and more impressed. Now, this to me is the NFC version of the Cincinnati Bengals. You have a gunslinger at quarterback. You also have a great wide receiver, future Hall of Famer, Mike Evans. Right? You have a surprising running attack. You have an offense who can hang with anyone. Defensively, they're mediocre. Right? Let's just say they're better defensively than the Cincinnati Bengals. Right? If you're going to make a speculation on a team you yourself don't think is going to win the conference, but you're looking at the odds, you're saying, wow, how high is this team's ceiling? Understand Tampa Bay's ceiling, because of their offense, is extremely high. Right? If they get in a shootout with Sam Darnold or Jared Goff, I think they have a chance. That's how I see the NFC. I'm fading, believe it or not, the Lions and the Vikings. Right? Next week's big game is very important, because understand, in my opinion, the loser is finished. Right? I'm also fading, even though they have double-digit wins, even though they're extremely well coached. I'm also fading the Washington Commanders. Why? Because in the playoffs, you're playing a different game. The defense looks entirely different. Right? Jaden Daniels, who started the year with a bang, then had a rough patch. Right? That we're forgetting about because he had 4 or 5 touchdowns against Philadelphia. Right? I think it's going to be too much for Jaden Daniels. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.